Thom Hartmann here with you. Richard Wolff is on the line with us. Dr. Richard Wolff, the economist, co-founder of Democracy at Work, the author most recently of Capitalism's Crisis Deepens, Essays on the Global Economic Meltdown. His website, democracyatwork.info or rdwolff with 2fs.com. You can tweet him at Prof. Wolff, as in Professor Wolff, PROFWLLFF, or at democracy@WRK. Professor Wolff, welcome back to the program.
Thank you very much, Tom. Glad to be here.
It is great having you on. I wanted to get, you know, you're a real economist, and I wanted to get your thoughts on what the meaning of this Republican tax scam is, what impact it will have, both over the short term and the long term economically. And you're also an astute political observer. I'm curious your thoughts on the politics of it.
Okay, well, even though I have my PhD in economics and all the rest of it, this bill has nothing to do with economics. In many cases, it flaunts the very economics that we mostly teach in American universities. By that I mean we've just come off of 35 years of growing inequality in the United States, income and wealth, and a clear growing majority of Americans who don't want that, who don't like it, who not only don't want it to continue, they want to reverse it to get to a much less unequal society. Given that, the remarkable thing about this new bill, this so-called tax reform, and the word reform has to have 3 or 4 quotation marks around it, the fact of the matter is it will significantly worsen the inequality that already besets the United States. It is an act of redistributing wealth from the bottom and the middle to those at the top. There's no nice way to say it. There's no fancy language to disguise it. Most Americans, to their credit, understand that, as every poll shows how unpopular it is. But we live, and here comes the economics, we live in a time and in an economy where the wealth distribution is so skewed to the top already that we have created among those at the top, the 1%, the 3%, however you calculate it, a clear understanding that they have a disproportionate share of the wealth in a country that is at least legally committed to universal suffrage, which means that we, the people, have the bulk of the votes, and they, the tiny minority, have the bulk of the wealth. It is then only a matter of time before we understand that we can use the ballot and change this situation and undo the inequality created by this economic system. To protect themselves, they've bought the political system. And that explains why, at the end of 35 years of growing inequality, we pass a tax bill that makes that inequality worse.
So what in addition to exacerbating inequality, and there are all these social ills that have been, you know, so well documented by Pickett and Kate Pickett and Richard
Williamson.
Yeah, and you know, in the spirit level and in why inequality matters. That in and of itself is terrible. That rising inequality, or just the presence of inequality, leads to everything from, you know, higher teenage pregnancy rates to more STDs, to more mental illness, to more crime, to, you know, to more depression, to more suicide, to more divorces, to more unwanted children. You know, blah, 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 right? Is that, we know the ills of inequality. Are there economic crises that we may face beyond simple inequality that will come out of this tax bill? I mean, I look back at 1921 when Harding ran on the his campaign platform was you know, more business in government, less government in business. In other words, privatize and deregulate. And he campaigned on dropping that 91% tax rate that funded World War I down to 25%, which he did. And that kicked off the Roaring '20s and led us right to the Great Crash in 1929. Reagan cut taxes in the early 80s, and that led to the Great Crash in 1987, the second worst stock market crash since 1929. George W. Bush cuts taxes in the early 2000s, and what do we get in 2007, 2008, 2009? Another great crash. It seems to me like this is the kind of thing, this is the kind of Republican politics that Harding, Coolidge, and Hoover did, that both Bushes, that Reagan and both Bushes did, that inevitably leads to bubbles and crashes. Or am I missing something?
No, and that's what I meant earlier. You're missing nothing. That's conventional economics. It goes something like this. Every dollar that you put into the hands of people who are working class or middle class or poor, they will spend, and that's because they have to sustain their lifestyles. They need to spend pretty much what they earn, and they're lucky if they don't go into debt and spend more than they earn. Contrarily, if you put a dollar in the hands of very rich people, they already are saving, that is, not spending a large portion of what they earn because they earn so much. So if you are making greater inequality, in effect, you are making your poor and middle less able to buy and your rich people more able to buy, which rich people can't and won't do because they're already spending more than they can possibly consume as it stands, and that therefore you are undercutting the demand in your society for goods and services, and that's a much deeper threat to jobs and the future than anything else you could do.
So you're saying this tax cut could be economically suppressive rather than stimulative?
Absolutely. The nonsense spewing out from Trump and the others about how they know the future, and set aside the absurdity of these folks predicting the future. Let's remember that even Trump and his people didn't think he was going to win the election. I mean, their knowledge of the future is nothing to count on, but they're telling us, just wait. In some future time, this tax cut is going to have all these wonderful benefits. It reminds me of medieval landlords telling peasants who were dying of starvation that they shouldn't really be worried because a wonderful time in heaven is awaiting them just right after they die. I mean, this is unspeakable economic nonsense that is being spewed by people who want you to believe that what they've done to improve their wealth even more now is going to, in some future time, trickle down in the form of benefits for you. This hustle has been perpetrated on the American people so many times, I would have thought you can't possibly run that hustle again.
Yeah, but well, they did, and they've got willing helpers in Fox News and right-wing hate radio. We have a little less than a minute left before we hit a hard break here, Professor Wolff. Thoughts on how Americans should be responding to this?
Well, here I'm terribly disappointed politically. The Democratic Party politely votes against this and then quietly sits down. I mean, this is an outrage built upon another outrage perpetrated by an outrageous president and government. There ought to be student demonstrations in the schools and labor movement strikes and other things. There ought to be a real political opposition in the terms that we need to show what the people clearly feel about this. It needs to be some leadership. And I am deeply disappointed that the Democratic Party has shown no ability or willingness to partner with the union movement, the student movement, women who showed what they could do right after the election of Trump, poor people and others, to begin to say this has gone way beyond what ought to be allowed.
Yeah. Well, if nothing else, then this represents an opportunity. I know the Progressive Caucus is all over this thing. There are a number of Democrats who are raising that point, but I think you're right. As a party, I haven't seen a position statement. Hopefully, it'll come. Richard, and some good political theater like the Tea Party did. Professor Richard Wolff, thank you so much for being with us.